Welcome to the presentation on Good Clinical Practice, Part 5, Sponsors' Responsibilities. Definition of sponsor: an individual, company, institution or organization which takes responsibility for the initiation, management and/or financing of a clinical trial. Sponsor investigator: an individual who both initiates and conducts alone or with others a clinical trial and under whose immediate direction the investigational product is administered to, dispensed to or used by a subject. The term does not include any person other than an individual. Example, it does not include a corporation or an agency. The obligations of a sponsor investigator include both those of a sponsor and those of an investigator. Responsibilities of sponsor. Responsibilities of sponsor includes quality assurance and quality control of trial conducted, selection of contract research organization, providing medical expertise while conducting trial, taking decision on trial design and trial management, data handling and record keeping, selection of investigator and allocation of responsibilities. Sponsor has responsibility to provide compensation to subjects and investigators, financing the clinical trial, notification or submission to regulatory authorities as per obligations detailed in GCP and other guidelines, confirmation of review and approval of trial related documents by IRB or IEC, providing information on investigational products to all trial related staff. Sponsor has responsibility to ensure that products, manufacturing, packaging, labeling and coding of investigational products, supplying and handling investigational products as per GMP, ensure that record access is controlled and provided to relevant parties only. Sponsor has responsibilities to disseminate safety information, adverse drug reaction reporting and conducting monitoring, audit and identification of non-compliance and taking corrective actions. Sponsor should decide on premature termination or suspension of a trial if required and provide clinical trial study reports of all single and multi-center trials. Quality assurance and quality control. The sponsor is responsible for implementing and maintaining quality assurance and quality control systems with written SOPs to ensure that trials are conducted and data are generated, documented or recorded and reported in compliance with the protocol, GCP and the applicable regulatory requirements. The sponsor is responsible for securing agreement from all involved parties to ensure direct access to all trial-related sites, source data or documents and reports for the purpose of monitoring and auditing by the sponsor and inspection by domestic and foreign regulatory agencies. Quality control should be applied to each stage of data handling to ensure that all data are reliable and have been processed correctly. Agreements made by the sponsor with the investigator or institution and any other parties involved with the clinical trial should be in writing as part of the protocol or in a separate agreement. Sponsor's responsibilities towards contract research organization. A sponsor may transfer any or all of the sponsor's trial-related duties and functions to a CRO, but the ultimate responsibility for the quality and integrity of the trial data always resides with the sponsor. The CRO should implement quality assurance and quality control systems. Any trial related duty and function that is transferred to and assumed by a CRO should be specified in writing. Any trial related duties and functions not specified, transferred to and not assumed by a CRO are considered as retained by the sponsor. All references to a sponsor in this guideline also apply to a CRO to the extent that a CRO has assumed the trial-related duties and functions of a sponsor. Medical expertise. The sponsor should designate appropriately qualified medical personnel who will be readily available to advise on trial-related medical questions or problems. If necessary, outside consultants may be appointed for this purpose. Clinical trial designing. The sponsor should utilize qualified individuals, example biostatisticians, clinical pharmacologists and physicians, as appropriate throughout all stages of the trial process, from designing the protocol and CRFs and planning the analysis to analyzing and preparing interim and final clinical trial reports. For further guidance on clinical trial designing, please refer Clinical Trial Protocol and Protocol Amendments, the ICH Guideline for Structure and Content of Clinical Study Reports, and other appropriate ICH guidelines on trial design, protocol and conduct. Detailed discussion on clinical trial design is beyond the scope of this presentation. Clinical trial management, data handling and record keeping. The sponsor should utilize appropriately qualified individuals in supervising the trial, overall conducting of the trial, handling the data, verifying the data, in conducting the statistical analysis and in preparing the trial reports. The sponsor may consider establishing an independent data monitoring committee to assess the progress of a clinical trial, including the safety data and the critical efficacy endpoints at intervals, and to recommend to the sponsor whether to continue, modify or stop a trial. The independent data monitoring committee should have written operating procedures and maintain written records of all its meetings. When using electronic trial data handling and or remote electronic trial data systems, the sponsor should ensure and document that the electronic data processing system conforms to the sponsor's established requirements for completeness, accuracy, reliability and consistent in performance, that is, as per validation protocol. Sponsors should maintain SOPs for using these systems. Ensure that these systems are designed to permit data changes in such a way that the data changes are documented and that there is no deletion of entered data, that is, it maintains an audit trail, data trail and or edit trail. Maintain a security system that prevents unauthorized access to the data. Maintain a list of individuals who are authorized to make data changes. Maintain adequate backup of the data. Safeguard the blinding if any. Example, maintain the blinding during data entry and processing. If data are transformed during processing, it should always be possible to compare the original data and observations with the processed data. The sponsor should use an unambiguous subject identification code that allows identification of all the data reported for each subject. The sponsor or other owners of the data should retain all of the sponsor-specific essential documents pertaining to the trial. The sponsor should retain all sponsor-specific essential documents in conformance with the applicable regulatory requirements. of the countries where the product is approved and or where the sponsor intends to apply for approval. If the sponsor discontinues the clinical development of an investigational product, that is, for any or all indications, routes of administration and or dosage forms, the sponsor should maintain all sponsor-specific essential documents for at least 2 years after formal discontinuation or in conformance with the applicable regulatory requirements. If the sponsor discontinues the clinical development of an investigational product, the sponsor should notify all the trial investigators or institutions and all the regulatory authorities. Any transfer of ownership of the data should be reported to the appropriate authorities as required by the applicable regulatory requirements.